Miles out. That's a shot so rare only a handful of snipers in history have ever pulled it off. On a blistering morning at Salt Mesa Proving Grounds, a SEAL team gathered for what they thought was just a skills test. In walked a woman they'd never seen before, hair pulled back, lean frame, civilian clothes, no name tag, no introduction. Nobody knew who sent her, or why she was there. The wind howled across the range. She took position steady as stone, one trigger pull. The round sliced through shifting desert air, landing dead center on a steel target over 2 miles away. Silence. SEAL commander just stared. The woman set her rifle down, turned with the faintest smile. Care to take a shot, Commander? Now here's the question for you. If someone can make a shot the world calls impossible, without a rank, without a record, and without anyone knowing her name, who exactly brought her here? And what's she really capable of? Meet Claire Monroe. 31 years old? American-born with roots tracing back to the Appalachian Mountains. Dark chestnut hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. Lean build, but her features are sharp. The kind that make people think twice. And her eyes, they don't just look at things. They size them up, measure them, hold something no one can quite read. She arrived at Red Rock Training Command with a title that raised eyebrows, advanced ballistics. Specialist, no military rank, no unit patch, no backstory offered. Her first morning at the base, she walked into the long-range testing bay, a cavernous structure cut into the desert edge. Around her, SEAL operators stood in loose groups, exchanging glances. To them, this was just another civilian. Tech brought in to run simulations or tweak some software. Master Chief Brett Rowan, range commander, muttered to his spotter with a smirk, "Think she can even shoulder a TAC 338? The question wasn't exactly cruel, just honest skepticism. Claire stood at 5'6", maybe a $125, surrounded by men built like walking fortresses. In that company, she looked more like someone's younger sister who'd taken a wrong turn onto a classified base. Claire didn't rise to the bait. She didn't correct them. She didn't even introduce herself. Instead, she walked straight to the armorer's table. One adjustable bipod, one unmodified TAC 338. The armorer blinked. "Any special specs?" Claire's voice was calm, level. "Whatever you'd hand someone you don't expect to succeed." The room got a little quieter at that. The armorer set a standard issue TAC 338 on the table. No custom barrel, no tuned trigger, just a basic optic and stock ball ammo. When her turn came, she stepped to the firing position, each move deliberate. She didn't fidget, didn't look around for approval. She sat down at the bench, the rifle resting before her, as the chatter from the SEAL team faded to a low, watchful silence. What everyone on that range saw looked wrong. Claire Monroe's forearm was drawn too close to the rifle stock. No shoulder padding. No spotter beside her. No electronic wind meter clamped to the bench. One SEAL let out a low chuckle. With that stance, she'll be lucky to hit anything at 500 yards. Forget 2 miles. Another added, maybe she's just here to calibrate the sensors. Claire didn't answer. She didn't look their way. The desert air at Red Rock Proving Grounds was steady at 16 knots. Crosswind deviation, 7 degrees off true south. Temperature spread, 4 degrees. Between her firing point and the steel plate 2 miles away, heat shimmer distorted the sightline. She didn't reach for a device. She didn't ask for assistance. Instead, she adjusted her scope using nothing more than a handwritten formula taped to its side, like something she'd memorized years ago and never needed to check twice. The operators exchanged glances, some skeptical, some curious. Her first shot snapped downrange. The report echoed off the range walls, a sharp ping, the round clipping the left edge of a card-sized, played at 2,600 yards. Lucky, someone muttered. Her second shot broke the air a moment later, punching clean through the forehead of a full-size rubber silhouette at 3,000 yards. This time, in the middle of a sudden crosswind gust. A gust that would have thrown almost any marksman wide. The range went still. One SEAL whispered under his breath, 3,000, in a crosswind. Did she just run the Coriolis in her head? Claire stood calm. No grin, no boast. She removed her ear protection and passed the rifle to Master Chief Brett Rowan the way. Someone might hand over a coffee mug. Care to try? The question lingered in the warm desert air like a dare. Brett took the rifle. Same bench, same wind, same target. His shot landed 8 inches low. 12 inches right. Brett Rowan wasn't just any marksman. He had medals stacked in his service record. Years of deployments, dozens of competitions under his belt. Claire only watched, and her expression unreadable. No gloating. No judgment. Just quiet observation. Wind calcs off by 0.7 degrees, she said softly. And you're holding your breath 2 seconds too long. Brett turned, incredulous. How the hell do you know that? Your heartbeat shifts the rifle's vibration. I can see it. Through the mount. The other SEALs traded looks. This wasn't some civilian tech with a lucky trigger pull. This was someone who read ballistics the way other people read books. Someone who understood shooting in a way that didn't come from a weekend, course, or a handful of deployments. A retired sniper who once served in Kandahar later said, I met a woman once. Hit a fuel drum 6.5 clicks out, firing through a valley gap. When I asked where she learned it, she just said, I learned to measure wind by the heartbeat of people about to die. After the 3,000-yard shot, everyone had their theories. To most on the range, Claire Monroe was just some ballistics whiz who'd gotten lucky. Good wind, steady trigger, a rare combination of factors lining up. Beginner's luck dressed up as skill. But the next morning, she made a request that shifted the conversation. She asked permission to camp overnight on the North Ridge. Every operator on base knew the North Ridge. Steep shale, unstable footing, and wind currents that tore through like angry ghosts. Nobody chose that position. It was where marksmanship reputations went to die. After the 3,000-yard shot, everyone had their theories. To most on the range, Claire Monroe was just some ballistics whiz who'd gotten lucky. Good wind, steady trigger, a rare combination of factors lining up. Beginner's luck dressed up as skill. But the next morning, she made a request that shifted the conversation. She asked permission to camp overnight on the North Ridge. Every operator on base knew the North Ridge. Steep shale, unstable footing, and wind currents that tore through like angry ghosts. Nobody chose that position. It was where marksmanship reputations went to die. Master Chief Brett Rowan didn't buy her calm request. He assigned 2 SEALs to shadow her. Privately, Brett suspected some kind of trick. Maybe she'd found a way to manipulate the electronic wind gauges or spoof the target sensors. But when the 2 operators hiked up to her position, what they found stopped them cold. No laptops, no GPS unit, no digital rangefinder. Instead, Claire had spread out vintage field gear, a pair of old M19 binoculars, the kind that hadn't seen battery power in decades, a folded paper map marked with neat handwritten calculations, manual barometric instruments that looked like they belonged in a World War II museum. No electronics, no shortcuts. She set her rifle with methodical precision, her movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. Then she began her run. 5 rounds, 5 separate moving targets, shadowed by ridges, ranges from 2,400 to over 3,100 yards. All 5 shots hit dead center, perfect head or center mass strikes. The 2 spotters glanced at each other, their expressions shifting. This wasn't luck. This wasn't favorable wind. This wasn't even technology. This was something else entirely. By the time they hiked back down, both men carried the same unspoken question. That evening, SEAL Unit Commander Captain James Rourke pulled Claire's file. No service record in any Allied military database. No sniper school graduation. No competition standings. No contractor employment history. She existed on paper. But professionally, her background was a blank wall. Until Rourke dug deeper. There, buried under layers of security protocols, he found something. A single black-level encrypted file. It was tagged with one phrase. Operation Glass Dagger, Thorn Point. A mission still sealed under layers of classification. 3 years ago, a ranger platoon walked into an ambush in the Kunar Valley. 7 enemy gun teams had them pinned. It should have been a massacre. But then, something no one could explain happened. 7 precision shots, fired from distances the Rangers couldn't even calculate. The incoming fire stopped. The enemy positions went silent. No one ever saw the shooter. No one could even pinpoint where the rounds came from. That mission was logged as a miracle extraction. At least that's what it looked like until Captain James Rourke requested a partial declassification. What he read shifted the way he looked at everything happening on base now. That afternoon, Master Chief Brett Rowan confronted Claire Monroe directly. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Her answer was quiet but carried weight like steel on stone. In a place where nobody teaches, only those who survive graduate. Brett knew enough combat history to recognize the tone of someone who wasn't exaggerating. A technician passing by overheard the exchange, and something in his memory snapped into place. Back in 2017, forward operating base. Delta lost all comms during a coordinated strike. An unidentified sniper eliminated 4 heavy machine gun nests from Extreme. Range 2.8 to 3.1 kilometers, firing through dense cover. Those impossible shots cleared an evacuation route for a trapped technical team. SIGINT teams monitoring the airwaves caught a single radio intercept from an untraceable call sign. When targets can't see me, it means they don't have any chances left. Later, voice matching software compared that transmission to Claire's current vocal patterns. The match came back at 97% certainty. The pieces began falling into place. Claire Monroe wasn't just a skilled civilian. She wasn't just a lucky shot. She was a ghost, the kind of asset who operated in the gaps between official missions. The kind of shooter you never put on a roster, but who shows up when conventional forces can't do the job. And yet, something about her behavior didn't fit the stereotype of an elite operator. It was in the way she checked her gear 3 times before firing, the way she never celebrated a clean hit, the way she carried something heavier than her rifle. She shoots like someone who missed. When it mattered, one SEAL remarked quietly, and can't afford to miss again. Brett decided to test that theory. Over the next several days, he set up scenarios designed to break her precision. Moving targets at max range, poor visibility, multiple objectives under time pressure. Claire hit every single one, but her demeanor never changed. No swagger, no satisfaction, just the same quiet routine. Prepare, execute, reset. It wasn't about proving she could hit the target. One of the SEALs finally said what the others had been thinking. She's not proving anything to us. She's proving something to herself. And that raised the question nobody could answer. What happened to make her this precise, this methodical, this detached? And why does it feel like she's still waiting for the shot that really matters? Someone with Claire Monroe's skill set working as a civilian contractor instead of leading. Black Tier operations didn't make sense. Captain James Rourke authorized a deeper search, deeper than normal, clearance ever allowed. What they found buried in the restricted archives explained everything. And it also explained why Claire Monroe could never officially exist. The next morning, Master Chief Brett Rowan watched her from the observation deck, binoculars steady. Claire was alone on the North Ridge. She fired a single round, checked the impact through her scope. Then she made a quiet notation in a worn, leather-bound journal, its pages weathered, corners softened from years of use. And then she just sat 5 minutes, motionless, eyes fixed on the desert horizon. It wasn't practice. Brett recognized the stillness. She wasn't sighting the wind. She was remembering something heavy. There was grief in her posture. Not the loud kind, but the kind that settles deep in the bones. The kind that comes from carrying responsibility for outcomes that can't be undone. Whatever had built Claire Monroe's skill set had also built her isolation. She shot with the precision of someone who couldn't afford to miss again, and the solitude of someone who already had. Later, one SEAL team member put it into words. I used to think skill was forged in training camps, but some people shoot like they've been hunted themselves. And they'll burn everything they've got to make sure no one else feels that again. At the end of the training cycle, Brett Rowan organized a complex final scenario. A hostage rescue, the most intricate they'd ever staged for a civilian. Claire's turn was coming, and Brett knew. Whatever truth she'd been holding back might surface. The moment she stepped onto that range, the final exercise wasn't just a shooting test. It was a full-blown hostage rescue simulation, complete with moving hostiles, tight time limits, and strict civilian safety protocols. The kind of drill that separated true operators from marksmen, who only looked good on a static range. Claire Monroe had been assigned as nothing more than an observer, a secondary support asset. She wasn't supposed to fire a single shot. But halfway through the scenario, the primary sniper's comms went dead during a critical phase. From the ground, Master Chief Brett Rowan had 2 options. Abort the mission, or trust the one person no one fully understood. Before he could decide, Claire's calm voice broke the silence. I'll take the shot. She didn't walk to the optimal shooting nest. She didn't choose the best vantage point. Perfect execution. But it wasn't just the speed or the accuracy that caught Brett's attention. It was the method. Claire hadn't just picked off targets. She'd conducted a complete tactical symphony from a single position, anticipating the ground team's needs as if she was reading the battlefield. 3 steps ahead. That's when Brett's radio crackled. An urgent code from higher command. Someone far above wanted to know exactly who just shattered every simulation record on file. Minutes later, Brett's secured terminal displayed a name. Project Vanta. Classification Tier X. Call sign. Black Echo 3. Status. Dormant. Clearance presidential. Claire Monroe hadn't just been part of the program. She was the program. The Black Sniper program. Stateless operations with no unit designation. No official existence. Operators used only when missions were so sensitive, so dangerous they could never appear in any report. The kind of work where success meant no one ever knew the mission happened. Brett requested deeper clearance. One file opened. Operation Nightfall. 3 years earlier. Syria-Jordan border. Mission, extract a war crimes investigator, carrying evidence that could prevent a mass killing. Multiple hostile forces converged on the target location. No air support. No backup. Claire had been positioned on overwatch. She had clear sightlines on all enemy positions. Weather conditions perfect. Angles optimal. The operation unfolded flawlessly, until the final moment. As the investigator reached the extraction helicopter, an enemy sniper lined up for a kill shot. Claire had him in her crosshairs. 1847 meters. Slight headwind. Well within her capabilities. Then, movement. A child, and maybe 7 years old, chasing a battered soccer ball. She ran directly into Claire's line of fire. Claire hesitated. 2 seconds. Maybe 3? Long enough for the child to clear the danger. Not long enough to save her commanding officer, Captain Sarah West. West Point graduate, distinguished service record. Captain Sarah West wasn't just Claire Monroe's commanding officer. She was the closest thing Claire had ever had to family. West had coordinated the extraction that night. She was on comms, steady and focused, guiding the team through the chaos, until the enemy sniper's round found her instead of the war crimes investigator. West went down, still calling for support that couldn't reach her in time. Still trusting Claire to make the shot that mattered. Claire did take the shot. She dropped the enemy sniper, then his 2 spotters, then the machine gun crew providing cover, all eliminated with clinical precision. But it was 2 seconds too late to save the one person who mattered most. The investigator survived. His testimony stopped a genocide, over 30,000 civilians saved. The mission was stamped success in every official report, but Claire saw it differently. She walked away from Project Vanta, voluntarily terminated her position, erased her military identity, refused every honor, every medal. She disappeared into civilian life with a promise, never to carry rank again. So when Brett finally asked the question that had been gnawing at everyone, "Why come back now? Why this?" her answer was stripped of ego but heavy with truth. "Because I haven't forgiven myself yet. If I can help someone else survive, I get to live with myself one more day." The SEAL Command offered her everything. Full reinstatement. Fast track to Special Operations Command. Recognition for her service. She refused all of it. "I don't need a name or a rank," she said quietly. "Just bullets that arrive on time." And that's when it sank in for the men who'd seen her work. The irony was brutal. The woman who could hit any target at any distance could never live with the one shot she didn't take quickly enough. Her precision wasn't about skill alone. It wasn't about training. It was about atonement. Every perfect shot was an apology to Captain Sarah West. Every life saved was a payment on a debt Claire believed she'd never fully settle. But there was something else the SEALs slowly began to understand. Claire's hesitation in Syria didn't come from fear. It didn't come from incompetence. It came from humanity. From refusing to treat a child's life as acceptable collateral damage. Most snipers learn to bury that humanity to do their jobs. Claire learned to use it. She shot with the precision of someone who understood the full moral weight of every single trigger pull. Her accuracy wasn't just mechanical. It was ethical. She hit her targets because she had already calculated the unbearable cost of missing. It came from humanity. From refusing to treat a child's life as acceptable collateral damage. Most snipers learn to bury that humanity to do their jobs. Claire learned to use it. She shot with the precision of someone who understood the full moral weight of every single trigger pull. Her accuracy wasn't just mechanical. It was ethical. She hit her targets because she had already calculated the unbearable cost of missing. The deeper the files on Operation Nightfall went, the more the picture sharpened. Captain Sarah West had been more than Claire Monroe's commanding officer. She had been the one who spotted Claire years earlier, back when she was a sharp but reckless Special Forces marksman. West was the one who'd seen potential in the young soldier that others dismissed. The one who taught her that precision wasn't about hitting a target. It was about saving lives. West believed in selective engagement, that the right shot mattered, more than the fast one. She died because Claire followed that teaching. And that was the burden Claire could never put down. She taught me to think before I shoot. Claire told Brett in one of the rare moments she opened up. And thinking cost me the person who mattered most. The psychological evaluations buried in her file revealed just how deep the wound ran. Claire didn't just carry guilt over West's death. She carried the weight of the 30,000 civilians who lived because she hesitated. The weight of being right. For the wrong reason. She hadn't missed the shot. She had chosen not to take it until it was safe. And that choice cost her everything personal. Some people think those who step out of the spotlight do it because they're not strong enough to stay. Claire Monroe stepped out because she'd seen exactly what happens when good people hesitate in the dark. After the record-shattering simulation, the training base quietly authorized a revolutionary new program. Echo line, precision shooting, and blind zones. The philosophy was unlike anything the military had fielded in years. No computers for ballistic calculations, no electronic wind meters, no digital rangefinders, just human senses, real-world environmental conditions, natural biorhythms. Claire wasn't allowed to lead the program officially. She still had no rank, no position in the formal hierarchy, but she was always there, sitting in the back of every class, watching, adjusting, making quiet corrections the instructors couldn't. Her teaching style was unlike anything the students had experienced. One trainee remembered, she didn't talk much, but when I missed a shot by 3 degrees, she didn't ask about my grip or my stance. She asked, "What were you afraid of when you pulled the trigger?" I told her, "The wind." She shook her head. "No, you were afraid of being wrong, and that fear is what pulled your shot off target." Another student described her exactly the same way. Claire Monroe's approach to training was unlike anything the Echo line instructors had ever seen. She taught us to shoot with our entire body. One graduate recalled, not just our eyes and hands, heart rate, breathing, muscle tension. Everything affects the bullet's path. Claire could watch someone take a shot and tell them exactly what they were feeling, their emotional state, just by reading their trigger pull. 3 months in, the first Echo Line class posted results that raised eyebrows at the Pentagon. 2 students passed the 2,900-meter accuracy test, a mark that normally took years to reach. But the numbers weren't the most important change. What mattered was what the students had developed, ethical precision. One graduate wrote in his evaluation, "I didn't succeed because of technical skill alone. I succeeded because she taught me that pulling the trigger is a moral decision as much as a mechanical one. Every bullet has consequences. And if I'm going to take that shot, I'd better be absolutely certain it's the right one." Her philosophy began to ripple beyond the base. Claire's methods reshaped how the marksmen thought about their role. She taught them to read environmental conditions by feeling them on their skin, instead of depending on electronic instruments, to calculate distance by understanding how light bends at different elevations, to time their shots to the natural rhythm of their own heartbeat, instead of fighting against it. But above all, she taught them to shoot with purpose, not just precision. In one rare group session, she addressed them all. Every bullet has a story. Make sure it's a story you can live with for the rest of your life. Her students learned that the most important shot wasn't the longest or most difficult technically. It was the shot that saved lives, when every other option had failed. And sometimes the most important miss was the shot they chose not to take, because something more important was at stake. Within 6 months, her influence began showing in the field. Reports came back from operations. Echo Line graduates were requesting fewer shots, but their mission success rates were higher. They were taking more time to assess situations. They were more cautious about collateral damage. And when they did engage, their shots were devastatingly precise. She didn't just teach us to shoot better, one operator wrote in a classified report. She taught us to shoot smarter. She made us understand that the most powerful weapon isn't the rifle, it's the decision of when to use it. And then one night, Claire was gone. No announcement, no ceremony, no forwarding address. She left behind her customized TAC 338 rifle, the handmade scope she'd modified over years, and a single handwritten note. "Nobody needs to know who I am, but every shot that arrives on time is an apology I can't speak out loud." Base Command decided to preserve her empty quarters exactly as she'd left them, not as a shrine, but as a reminder. The 3,000-meter shooting platform on Salt Creek Ridge was left exactly as Claire Monroe had walked away from it. The mount where her TAC 338 had rested remained untouched. Base Command added only one thing, a small bronze plaque bolted into the steel frame. It read, "She shot from here. Not for fame, only because someone else's life needed accuracy." Within a year, multiple US and Allied training facilities began quietly adding a new curriculum module. It wasn't called Echoline in the open. It wasn't called Vanta either. The official name was Anonymous Operations, Precision Without Recognition. It wasn't about shooting technique alone. It was about decision-making under moral pressure. How to maintain humanity while executing what others might call inhuman precision. How to carry responsibility without demanding recognition. Rumors began to swirl about where Claire had gone. Some said she was somewhere in the mountains of Montana, teaching archery to hearing-impaired kids, showing them how to feel the air on their skin before they released the string. Others claimed she was working with wildlife rescue teams in Alaska, using her skill to dart endangered animals for relocation, hitting moving targets without injury, saving them without stress. No one ever confirmed the stories. But every so often, somewhere in the world, a sniper would make an impossible shot, a clean, perfect round in conditions no one else could match. And when that happened, the operators who knew her story had a quiet ritual. They would place one gloved hand on the ground and whisper, "Echo 3, shot true," not because they knew Claire Monroe personally, but because they understood what she represented. The lesson she left behind was simple and permanent. It's not the distance that matters. It's not the record. It's the reason you take the shot. Claire Monroe's story traveled quietly, whispered through briefing rooms, late-night barracks conversations, and dusty forward outposts. Not the technical details of her impossible 3,000-meter shots, not the classified specifics of the missions she saved. What spread was the understanding that the most powerful warriors are often the ones who choose to remain invisible, the ones who measure success not in medals, but in lives preserved, the ones who understand that real strength comes from carrying responsibility without ever asking for credit. Claire didn't become a legend because she was the most accurate sniper in the world. She became a legend because she refused to celebrate that fact. Her story began to teach a new generation of operators, something few manuals ever mention. Precision isn't about perfection. It's about showing up when it matters most, even when nobody will ever know you were there, especially when nobody will ever know you were there. In an era obsessed with social media recognition and public heroism, Claire chose a different path. She chose excellence in the shadows, to save lives from impossible distances, to accept the full moral weight of every trigger pull, and to carry it alone. In doing so, she created a new model of service, one measured not by applause or decorations, but by the silence that follows a single shot that mattered, by the lives that continued, because someone was willing to be precise, when precision was the difference between hope and tragedy. Her legacy left a final truth for those who listened. The greatest snipers aren't the ones who hit the most targets. They're the ones who understand when not to shoot, and who carry the weight of both decisions with equal precision.